Welcome to Can You Handle the Truth? This is a podcast about facts that don't need permission and truths that don't care how we feel about them. We live in a world where habits are defended louder than evidence, especially when health, money, and identity are involved. Discomfort doesn't mean something is wrong. It often means something is true. So let's ask the only question that matters. Can you handle the truth? This is also the home of free will and free won't. I'm going to define that today. I may again in the future. It's a very possibly confusing phrase. Free will is the power to choose. Free won't is the power to pause and decide whether the choice is truly yours. It has a lot to do with self-sabotage and things like that. Today, I have my daughter, Alex Hartinger, with me. Alex is a mom of two boys and a natural health practitioner whose journey started when her first son was born. She's worked with over 5,000 clients, trained dozens of other practitioners in muscle testing, and built a practice that integrates clinical nutrition, emotional clearing, mindset coaching, and nervous system regulation. She's an author, speaker, teacher, and retreat host, and she's passionate about helping people feel free and empowered in their health choices and in life. She also hosts classes and events within her practice all year long and brings her dog Rhythm to work every day. And if you just saw Rhythm just walked by in the background, he probably will make other appearances throughout this podcast, and that's just fine because he is my grand doggy. So, we have some things to talk about, but the first question I'd like to ask, kind of open up the realm of our conversation, is you've been doing this for 13 years, 5,000 plus clients, a lot of different experiences. What do you think your greatest accomplishment has been in this time?
Yeah, it's a hard question to kind of back up, right? So there's this I think of this in the context of like if I was choosing what I came to Earth to do, what have I accomplished in the past 13 years that has forwarded that or like come to fruition? And so the most obvious answer would be recovering my son, right? And helping him when he was born, he had a lot of issues, cognitive, digestive. We can talk about some of that stuff later. And so I needed to be open-minded enough to hear that there was another way to do things. And then we changed our lives. And we didn't just change them a little. There he is. We changed them a lot. We dove right in. We embraced a natural lifestyle. And I would say everything I did for my son was based on necessity at that point because there was no choice or option other than to help him get better, no matter what that took, right? So it took us about 6.5 years to fully recover him to where he doesn't have an IEP. He has you if you met him, you would never know what he went through as a young child and as a baby. So is that my greatest accomplishment? I was forced to do that. So I would say then what did I not have to do that I chose to do, which is then open it up and start my practice and help other people. So I think my biggest accomplishment is probably um doing whatever it took in growing a practice where based 100% on word of mouth, I've grown over the past decade plus to have seen over 5,000 clients in I think 20 plus states and to just have that reach and to help be responsible for other people understanding and having a very confident approach to how they take care of their families.
So that's interesting. The point that you made about you have clients in 20 states. So are you ever home or do you travel all the time to see these people?
No, I used to travel a lot for work before COVID world. But no, we don't have to. So my practice started all in person, and what I do is in muscle testing. So muscle testing is a technique that uses basically a reflex of the body. However, it's just energy. And so I like to explain it that it's very much a science. It's also an art and it's also a gift. And so, scientifically, you can study applied kinesiology, you can study the muscles in the body, you can learn about why muscle testing works. And then there's like a finesse to it because not everybody can do it. That's the art piece where it's like you have to do it day in and day out and you have to have a system. And so, I mean, artists have systems, right? So that's the art side. And then the rest of it is like the gift side, which I think is just like we all have gifts. And when we hone them in, the gift side is where I can work with people at a distance and I don't have to be with them to be able to help. So I do like, I mean, I like traveling. I wish I was like, sometimes I wish I got to travel a little bit more for work these days, but I also have a very attached 8-year-old that would not like love that life.
The reason I asked is I wanted to make sure that everyone understood that you actually don't have to see people to talk to them, to fix them, help them, not fix them, help them. Okay, because
Mhm.
your role is not to fix them. Your role is to
Oh,
help them fix themselves, right?
exactly. I say that all the time. Like I consider myself like a healer, but really that's like healing myself. And I don't pass on energy. I don't lay hands. I don't do those types of things. I give people the tools that they need to heal themselves.
Yep. Excellent. So, first question I have for you is from your perspective as a mindset coach, because realize she's got a lot of different layers here. Where do you see people confusing mental weakness with biological overload?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it's a good progression. I think there's rites of passage on journeys. So, like in nutrition, for example, before I went to health coaching certifications or learned clinical nutrition, I went through a phase of being vegan. I was a terrible vegan. I love dairy, but it's almost like a rite of passage. And then people will like completely 100% eliminate carbohydrates or so, what like there's these rite of passage things where it's like you have to experiment on yourself to learn and then to grow in what you're doing. And if you're not open to changing your mind, that's going to be rough. But um, I think in the mindset world and people being like what you're saying, like being like this overloaded, but physiologically, we actually are not designed to live like this. So I think that if you look at there's actually like three parts of the nervous system, but we'll focus on two, which is the sympathetic and parasympathetic. So sympathetic is like when you're on, and it's like you're making decisions. You're consciously thinking about things. It's where fight or flight is, but it's really where a lot of life is because it's where stress is. And the rest of it is like parasympathetic. That's like rest and digest. It's like where you can just kind of like chill. You can be even just going on a walk and you can be in parasympathetic. Our bodies are designed to be in parasympathetic about 80% of the time and sympathetic 20% of the time. And everybody's pretty much flip-flopped. So what happens when you're in sympathetic all the time and you don't go into that rest and digest? You're not recovering. And so if you don't recover, then everything hits you faster. And so even things like all these extra thoughts and anxieties and all of that come with that. Does that kind of answers it? I have one more thought, but I think it might segue into one of your other
Okay.
questions. So I'm gonna
So
wait.
I just want to make an observation about what you do. And, I'm very familiar with what you do, but the audience is
Hmm.
not, the listeners.
Hmm.
So do you find, uh, we talk about objective truths and what they, what a true objective truth is something that's non-negotiable, right? And,
Hmm.
and that has to do with cognitive dissonance, because when people are presented with objective truths, and they go against their beliefs and their programming, they say that that's really not the truth. Do you find that in your practice that people sometimes question your ability to test them with energy testing?
Yeah, I will say though, I'm a very strong, ever since I've become aware of being in an attraction-based universe, right? Like we are in an attraction-based universe. I don't tend to attract skeptics anymore. In the beginning, I think you do a little bit. And where we live, I am often people's first touch point in something natural. And so I do sometimes even just like to preface it by saying, like, we're just conditioned to think that we should just trust someone with a white coat on. I'm not saying we shouldn't all the time, but like labs and blood draws and that kind of stuff is somehow more objective to people. And I'm like, you just don't know about it. Once you see muscle testing, you can't unsee it. It's so obvious and so simple. It's almost so simple that that's what I think trips people up. But I also would just like to remind people, like, you're here because you heard I can help. And if I push on your arm, I will get you results better, faster, and with less supplements and spending less of your time and money. And I think that, I just say, like, you don't go to the dentist and ask them exactly how they filled your filling, if that's what they call that. But you don't have to know. You don't know the ins and outs of the car wash. You don't whatever. It's like, if this works, just let it work, right? And
Yep.
so over the course of the years, I think that I have a very like confident personality too that just comes off like, hey, this is what we're doing. So, in the beginning, I needed people who sort of like inherently trusted me or were desperate enough. But then you get some of those people who were desperate enough and they weren't getting answers anywhere else. And then we got rid of their headaches after 10 years, or we helped their digestive system, or they got pregnant when they couldn't. And then it's like, well, now they just tell somebody, and then that becomes the factor of like, I don't really care how you do it. And I get all kinds. I get people who, I mean, I have farmers who come in and they're like, I have no idea what you're doing. But like my buddy down the street, he said that you told him he had a toxin in his well, and as soon as he started taking his supplement, his joint aches went away, right? So
Right.
that's the magic right there, is
Yeah.
just like letting people have the experience.
Sure. Okay. Next topic is the I'm broken narrative. Okay.
Yo.
So, yeah, I'm broken. We literally could talk about this the rest of the day,
Yep.
not just the next hour, but
Yep.
so try to keep this as succinct as possible. But
Me and you being succinct.
yes,
Yeah,
right. Okay. That's an oxymoron, isn't
it is.
it? We're not going to get into the oxymoron thing. Okay. Why do so many people assume they're broken, which is anxious, lazy, unmotivated, instead of asking what might be dysregulating their bodies?
Okay. Okay. Couple of things. First of all, they get more attention for being broken, right?
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely. Yep, I
you
agree.
sit at a coffee shop lately, anywhere? I mean, for the past at least 10 years, and it's like, oh, I had to have hip surgery, and they put me under, and I came out, and this terrible thing happened. Yeah, well, guess what happened to me? It's like, that's the badge of honor, is being broken, being needy, being it's literally worn as a badge of honor in America. And we do get more attention for being sick than being healthy. So that's the first side of it. Why do people think that they're broken more? The, I mean, I guess that leads into the victim mentality versus ownership. And I think, and it is interesting as a practitioner, like part of my training and part of my gifts, I guess, is just being aware and around people and understanding and reading their energy. I'm not trying to read minds or thoughts, but there are some people who just genuinely, and this is not coming from a place of judgment, they don't know they don't know how to not be broken. And so their identity is wrapped up in that. And if you take that away, who are they? Right?
Yes.
So that's scary. And that's just a function of like our subconscious having this program that's running, right? And that program is the main determining factor of our habits. And so these people actually, they consciously want to get better because they don't want to feel like shit, but they subconsciously don't want to get better.
Correct.
And that's a function of like, that's like mass consciousness is feeling like that. And so I think, like critical thinking and or like just that ownership mentality is more rare. And I seriously think it goes back to that thing we've talked about how many times, like, strong times make weak men, weak and hard times make strong men. And we just are like, people don't have enough real problems.
Yep.
And so so then there's just all these things. And so But that's not to say it's not real, okay? It is real. These people are truly having anxiety. They are truly not able to get over the top of it. So I'm not disqualifying
Yep.
or trying to like belittle that because it is very real. And I do love that about my practice is that people actually do feel heard in that. And so then it's the conversation of like, this is why I got into mindset coaching because I watched people over the years get better, who got better and didn't get better when they should have. And that was a mindset piece. And it might not even be their own mindset. They might have their own mind right. And then they go home and everybody that they're around is so negative or doesn't, like doesn't want them, like crabs in the bucket. If you put crabs into a bucket, you don't have to put a lid on the bucket because they don't try to get out. And if one tries to get out, the other ones pull them back down. And if they still try, they pull the legs off and they kill the crab, right? So like a lot of people, even if they do want to get better, they can't get out of the bucket.
That was a pretty good explanation of self-sabotage right there, and herd mentality. And
Yeah.
what you touched on, the herd mentality, you didn't call it that,
Yeah.
but it's what everybody else is doing, and that's where you're comfortable. It's everybody, and this coffee shop uh, reference you made is so spot on. And if you go into general conversations, everybody has to one up each other on what they did at the doctor and what medications they're taking.
Hmm.
It's never, I was on a podcast yesterday with three guys, and I said, I'm 68 years old and I'm on no meds and I feel great. Why? They didn't have the answer. I gave them the answer, and that is because I take care of myself. Okay.
Yeah.
Because being healthy is hard. It is not easy. You have to work at it. There's not a
Hmm.
magic wand, right?
Yeah.
So, so we'll talk about natural health and what the society calls normalized health. What are some everyday habits that are normalized as healthy or necessary, but quietly undermine mental and emotional resilience?
Well, I I wouldn't say that I guess there's healthy things that we're calling healthy that aren't. I think more of the normalization of the things that are really not healthy that we embrace as coping mechanisms. A glass of wine with dinner, coffee for, in the first thing in the morning, um, needing to numb out and binge watch TV, mindlessly scrolling social media. And I'm not saying that I'm immune to these things. I do some of these things sometimes. I'm very aware of it though. Like, I think if you have an awareness of your habits, that's really powerful. But, oh, okay. So this past weekend, I was at a concert and I was sitting there with my boyfriend, and we are very, I don't know, like present in the moment people. And there was a row of people in front of us who paid at least $300 a seat to be there in this concert. And they're watching the fucking Bears game on their phones, which was the Packers too, but they were Bears fans. They were watching the football game on the phone during the concert. One of the most like visually stimulating concerts you can go to in the entire country. And they
Tell them
had to be
where it
on their
was,
phone.
because that's relevant.
We were at the Sphere in Las Vegas.
Yep.
And so it's not just a concert, it's a show. It's an
Yep.
experience. It's incredible. So we're sitting there and they are cheering on a football game and they're sitting right in front of us. And then when the Bears won, they were literally yelling, "Go Bears." Like, so, okay, so not only are they like, you know, not having their own lives, they're watching other people live theirs. But now you're literally doing two things at once. You are so stimulated or so lost with touch after the football game, they couldn't stay off of their phones. One lady was on Instagram during the concert. Another guy was I felt bad because I did record quite a bit of it, and then I feel like I'm not being as present, but like he was singing Jimmy Buffett and I wanted to send that to you, but this one guy recorded almost the whole thing, and then but he was literally texting it to his groups of people. I can see all this obviously, during the concert. And it's like you couldn't even wait for that to be done. It's like the inability to be present. And this is what they're preying on. They're hoping that you'll mindlessly eat, you'll mindlessly consume, because if you'll consume just data on a stupid little box, you'll consume anything. And they can get you to consume more food, they can get you to consume more alcohol, more caffeine, more drugs, right? So I think like in our world, like everybody's version of medicine is different. I posted about this last week. Like, if we didn't know anything about anything, and 100 years ago, before we were all massively overstimulated, and we went to the doctor because we were sick, and that doctor said, do more of what makes you feel alive, do more of what makes you feel joy, do more of what makes you feel purpose and peace. What would that be, right? It'd be walks outside. It'd be having a hobby. It'd be cooking and having a relationship with your food. It'd be sitting down and playing a game with your children. And it would be, it'd be air and fire and water, and that's medicine, right? And then you have your drugs. And we normalize drugs. And drugs are alcohol, caffeine, our phones, our social media. Politics is a drug for a lot of us, like myself included. It's a drug. We ultimately, like, we're addicted to that. And that's not medicine, right? So there is a fine line with that. So I think that normalizing the drugs, whether it's to live life or to, you only live once, life is short, it's not that bad, whatever it might be, is like where we've just completely gone awry. And that mainstream mentality is it's poison and it's everywhere.
Yep. You have mentioned a number of times when you see clients that one of the, especially a first time person, is you ask them what they're eating, and you make the observation, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, but I want you to comment on this and tell me if I'm correct here. There's a couple things. One, you can't fix it if they don't sleep at night, because sleep is the foundation of health. And you can't out supplement processed food that they eat at the grocery store every day. What do you think? Now, I mean, that would be that would be normalized.
Yeah. So at some point, this is just like I like to take things back to like what would we do in the wild? Because like, and this again, literally not coming from a place of judgment, but if a woman's like, I can't breastfeed, it's like, what would you do in the wild? You'd either figure it out or you'd get breast milk from someone else, right? So it's like this food conversation. I'm like, at some point, you cannot expect to be healthier than the food you eat. So if you're eating cheap, sick food, eventually, depending on your constitution, that shit's gonna catch up to you. And there's science behind this with Pottenger's cats and Weston Price, and so the first generation of eating this garbagey junk, they're like they can handle it. Plus, when people saying like, oh well, I ate mac and cheese when I was a kid. Well, when we were kids, mac and cheese wasn't genetically modified wheat; it was real dairy in there. It's totally different than what it is now. But the food, if it's not real, it's like we can handle some of that, but you have to know what your constitution is. You have to know how genetically strong you are and what generation of junk you're on. In cats, by the fourth generation, they had arthritis. The females were becoming aggressive. The males were becoming.
Could you explain the Pottinger's cats so
Sure.
that there's a reference
So
here?
yeah, so there's a study in the 1950s done on cats. They were doing adrenalectomies and they were feeding the cats like condensed milk and like meat cooked. And they were donated to several hundred cats. And these cats were eating, they couldn't afford to feed them the same thing. So they fed them raw milk and then nose to tail scraps from butchers. And they kept them separate because they were feeding them different things, so different control. And so what they found is that all of a sudden these cats eating the food that had been cooked and was like more processed. Like cats have enzymes to break down all the raw stuff more. That's like more their natural diet. And so they found that within a generation or two, they were starting to have like their teeth didn't fit in their mouths, their jaws were getting smaller, they were starting to have some arthritis, they were starting to have some behavioral issues. And then by the fourth generation, they were giving birth to stillborns or they were completely infertile. And this, third generation of the females being aggressive and the males being docile, like look around a middle school lately. I mean, you can see this happening and it's it's the epigenetics. Okay, so what happened to finish the Pottinger's cat story is that these other cats over here that were playful, vibrant, look in your eyes, super, having fun, good lives. They started feeding these sick cats the same diet, and it took them 3 generations to turn around what 4 generations of damage had done. And that, like we're just kind of mirroring that study now and watching that take place. And so you think of like, we probably don't have to be perfect, but we need to do a whole lot better. So normalizing the standard American diet is like, yeah, I mean, your supplements aren't going to work as well. Nothing's going to really click as much if your nutrition is based on junk.
Yep. Thank you. That was a great explanation, and it clears a lot of things up. People don't realize what is happening to our society with the processed food. Okay, and it's just not. I mean, it goes across everything. It's mental, physical. It affects all parts of our life when you're putting in stuff. We have a rule since my wife got sick 13 years ago, which is just about the time that Alex started her practice, because Alex actually basically saved Brenda's life, my wife. We had seen 17 doctors over 2 years, and nobody could find anything, and they all literally told her to hit the door. They said it's in your mind. You should just take narcotics. Alex walked in, said, "You have this," which they in 15 minutes she hit it on the head. Her mentor affirmed it 4 days later. So, you know, what it is that people don't understand that if you buy anything that has more than 5 ingredients and you can't pronounce the stuff that's in there, you shouldn't eat it. Okay? Because our ancestors didn't. And this is pure profit. This is just simply they're doing this to make money. So,
And they made it a drug just real fast. Like they literally put chemicals into the food that light up parts of your brain that real food can't light up. And
yep,
that's how they get you to eat more and become addicted to it.
yes. And one example would be gluten, which
Mm.
it naturally it's okay. It's modified, wheat and things like that with gluten and glyphosate. It lights up the pleasure center. So a piece of white bread, Wonder Bread as an example, probably gives you as much juice as a hit of weed, right? Because
You know,
it's doing that
yeah.
pleasure center in your brain.
And you do get like numbed out to it because like we quit eating bread for a long time now. If I ate a piece of white bread, it tastes like literally sweet to me. I don't like
Yep.
it. I don't care for it anymore.
hmm So we're going to move on to the nervous system for a minute. And why do you think the nervous system is still missing from most mainstream conversations about anxiety, motivation, and mental health? That's a big question. So take your time, because there's
Yep.
3 different areas, and you touched on the nervous system, sympathetic and parasympathetic. Why is this flipped 80/20 to 20/80?
Okay, a couple of reasons. I think that the reason that we're not talking about it enough is that most biology, chemistry, anatomy, and physiology, most medical conversations, most health conversations are done in a very linear fashion. There's, pharmaceutical drugs use known pathways and you can create known expectations and it's inputs and outputs and it's very linear. The nervous system is not linear, it's quantum. And so that's hard to explain. It's hard to, there's no medication, there's no money in them doing that. The more stressed you are, the more dependent and reliant you'll be on your crutches, right? Whether that's medication or drugs or whatever. I actually don't distinguish between recreational drugs and prescription drugs. I mean, drugs are drugs, and I like drugs, but there is no difference. Like if you if you're someone who's stuck on 8 medications, judging someone who's stuck on cocaine, like, I mean, what? You can't not take your drugs and you're judging somebody who can't quit cocaine or sugar? Like, That's insane to me. But it's so conditionally normalized. But the nervous system doesn't operate like, oh, well, when you get this stressor, this will happen in the body. That's not how it works. So there's a movie called The Arrival. Did you ever see that where the alien pods land on Earth? I think it should be like, I think I should play it in my lobby, in my waiting room, so people can understand quantum conversations because I'm a very quantum thinker. So when I was introduced to quantum physics and muscle testing, it was like coming home. I was like, oh, this makes my life so much easier because I'm no longer testing on a linear basis. Linear would be like, what organs are stressed out? Liver, thyroid, spleen, and then what's in there, and then what do we do to fix it? That's all very linear. Quantum physics is this idea that it's like, what does the nervous system want to do though? Like where do we need to focus? And so in the movie The Arrival, these alien pods like land on Earth and we're terrified. Obviously, they're bigger than us. We don't understand them. And so they're going in there with their guns and like as if these aliens give a shit. And they finally find a communications professor to go in to try to learn their language. And so what their language is when they shoot out they like live in water and these like things and they shoot out these like ink blots and they're in a circle. And so parts insides and the outsides of the circle mean different things and different areas of the circle mean different things. But when they shoot on an ink blot, it's the full thought. And you can understand the full thought just by seeing the ink blot, as opposed to our communication, which is like the dog ran. And you're like, but if you couldn't read fast, you'd be like, the dog what? The dog what? Right? Whereas if you see the ink blot, you can see the dog running. And so the communication with the nervous system is quantum. It's all big picture. It's all the full thought all the time, whereas the body isn't. And so truly, necessarily, we have to break it down. We have to get into the organs. We have to do things that support. And if you're supporting the organs, you're supporting the nervous system and vice versa. But this just constant stress again is what keeps the nervous system fired up and then the organs are not able to recover. And so now it's like people come in and they're like, should I buy grounding sheets? Do I need to buy this vibration plate, whatever? And like it's all good stuff. It works. Like I have a red light bed in my office. I have a PEMF. I think they're very therapeutic, very powerful. But we use them intentionally. But you're not deficient in dry brushing. Like we shouldn't have to do all the things every day just to combat what we're doing. When if we would take a layer off the top, think of your immune system like a bucket, right? You put something in the bucket, your body dumps it. And you can say immune system, but you can just say bucket of the body. Stress in general, any kind of stress, emotional, nervous system, chaos. You get a cold, your body deals with it, processes it, dumps the bucket. You eat pizza and beer, it's like, all right, well, your body processes it, dumps the bucket. You have an emotional stress, your body processes it, dumps the bucket. Well, what's happening is everybody's bucket's getting full. And because our nervous systems are on high, the bucket's not dumping. And so now people are like, well, I've never had issues with gluten before. And I was like, well, now you do because it's in the bucket. And so it's not the thing that caused this, most likely, but because it's in the bucket and your body can't dump the bucket, it's just associating it with all the other shit in the bucket.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff in the bucket, realistically, you can't control. Like you and I, like we design our lives. We design our days, our weeks, our time, our schedules. We're intentional. We have a lot of family time. But most people literally, I mean, they're trapped. And so they're in these like hamster wheel things where it's like, a lot of the work stress, relationship stress. I mean, most people can't even afford to get divorced. I think that's why divorce rates are down. But you can't like so you have this you can't even dump the relationship of the shitty whatever out of the bucket.
Yeah.
And so now you better dump the junk food out of the bucket and you better dump the other drugs out of the bucket and you better dump as much of that stress out of the bucket as you can because until you can change your life enough, you can't get enough out of the bucket otherwise.
So I'm going to go on a little tangent here because you talked about this quantum thing.
Yeah.
So how does this relate to emotions and emotions blocking healing? Because
Yeah.
you work with this, Brenda,
Yeah.
my wife works with this. Could you explain this? What's going on?
Sure. So emotions are energy in motion. And E equals MC squared, which is what we know Albert Einstein was trying to explain to us. All that means is that energy and matter are the same thing. It means that I have an energy field around me. A plant has an energy field around it. The sun's energy field is so big and strong that we can feel the heat all the way on Earth, right? We have an energy field around us in the shape of a pumpkin, about 6 to 8 feet around. And so that field of energy has tons of data running through it. And there's actually studies and research now showing that autoimmune conditions can exist in that energy field for up to 2 to 4 years before they manifest physically on the body. So what happens is emotions are actually involuntary. Feelings are what we choose. Okay, so emotions are involuntary. They come at us and they last about 60 to 90 seconds, and the rest of it really. So if you get bad news, you have 60 to 90 seconds of an emotion, which could be grief, shame, guilt, fear, whatever. Um, that emotion then becomes it turns into a feeling, and because it's flowing through our field of energy, what happens is it should go in and out like a screen door. And so, like, I just read this book called The Smell of Rain on Dust, which is about Native American grieving processes, which is really interesting. And they grieve very differently than we do. And they actually encourage like getting the emotions out and like really, really, really sitting in things. So what happens if we don't process the emotions is that they do get trapped in our tissues. And so if you could imagine that you have like a superhighway system running through you, and if an emotion gets trapped in that energy, it creates a roadblock. And now things that can attach to it because it was basically like fog. Now it's turning into water and then it's turning into ice. So that's kind of the equals MC squared, like energy, like the air can turn into water.
Hmm.
The water can turn into ice. You go from solid, you think solid is solid and it's matter, but it's just dense energy.
Yep.
And so as the emotions get trapped into the tissues, that creates blocks. And now it can attach to all the other junk in your body and it can trigger and manifest physical symptoms. And so you have to keep those things moving out. So you either need, techniques like tapping, breathing, laser, whatever, or someone like Brenda, or I do a little bit of it. She does a lot deeper, where you have this Holy Spirit gifted person who knows how to help you clear energy and move energy and keep those things moving. And it's just another thing in the bucket. Rhythm wants to be in the center. He
Yeah,
wants to be the center of attention
he
right now.
does. And he does a great job.
He just is in, he's just everywhere all the time.
Yep.
He's a part of the brand at this point.
So your clients are a variety of ages, all the way from newborns to
Yep.
80, 90-year olds. What do
Hmm.
you think that the generational difference is in health awareness? Because you're dealing with possibly at least three different generations.
Yeah, I think there's a split off in my generation where people are either don't want to know the truth or they actually are really open to being empowered by their health. I actually think your generation really liked the safety and comfort of doctors.
Hmm.
And so they didn't question it. And that's what got us here. Not for better or for worse, right? But it just did. Because life was hard for your parents, right? And there wasn't things weren't abundant. And
No,
so
right.
when people got sick and there became a medication to fix it, it was like that was really comforting.
Yep.
But then they took away all of the natural stuff. So I think that as generations, I think as humans, we're raising our consciousness levels. And so I think that like my children are more highly conscious and aware than I am, in a lot of ways. And so they're more in tune with their bodies and their energy. There, of course, are still a lot of people who are numbed out, but like I guess for the purposes of this, that's not who's ever going to listen to us. And so I think that like for our kind of people who like are thinking about things, I think that we shifted from trust to a massive distrust, almost distrust to the point of like maybe not serving us. I mean, myself included, like I have such a massive distrust for things that I didn't go to the dentist for 7 years, right?
Yeah.
Like that was not serving me. That was
No.
not serving me. That was not an adult decision. But I wouldn't go during COVID. And then I had so much stress in my life that I just didn't make the call.
Yep.
And that distrust, I'm not sure that it's serving us, but the trust wasn't either. So in most things, I mean, even in insurance companies, it's like write all the business. And then it's like get rid of all the business. And our economy, grow, don't grow. What like there's always a pendulum swing. So I think we went from this like trust to severe distrust. And really the truth is somewhere in the middle.
Hmm.
And a lot of I mean, a lot of the humans inside of like the medical system are not the enemy. They're good people. They're just
Yep.
stuck. They can't afford to think differently. But there's a lot of life-saving stuff in there, and there's a lot of things that give people their life back in there.
Yep.
Do I want to support them really? No, but there's a time and a place for that stuff. And I guess like that's
Yep.
where I try to not be a purist or an extremist, even though I have very strong opinions.
So I'm going to make a observation slash invitation because you made an observation about our people. Okay, and I understand what you're saying here.
Yeah.
You're talking about people that are open to new ideas. They
Critical
don't,
thinkers.
yes,
Hmm.
they don't have cognitive dissonance about many or most things. I would invite anybody listening or watching to contact us or to pursue some of the things we're talking about because part of overcoming cognitive dissonance is and this goes back to the free will and free won't. We can't make anybody do anything. We can't make any of you change. However, we can make you aware of the situation and give you knowledge. And then you have the courage to reevaluate your life, right? I mean, and this is where you get pushback. You know, I do. You know, well, she's a voodoo, she's a witch, right? She's a voodoo doctor, right? No, this is energy. Okay, we live on energy. Okay, I just wanted to throw that out there for people that are listening that are saying, "Whoa, man, this sounds crazy." Well, it does when you first hear it. The first time that Alex told me something, I looked at her and I said, "That's not right. That's not true." I mean, I didn't. We weren't having a discussion. I just told her she was wrong. And like 2 weeks later, I'm in a rabbit hole. And then 2 weeks later, I realized that wow, that was that was
I
just
think we've had a couple of those.
yes,
Yeah.
quite a few.
Yeah.
So I'm going to shift a little bit to mindset, okay? And why does mindset work fail for so many people, even when they're genuinely trying?
I think I true this is where I'm at right now, and it's my own progression of what I see. I think they're allowing distractions. I think that they're allowing too much outside influence. I think that people are searching so much and we have so much access to information that it's paralyzing. It's so overwhelming. So I think that instead of deciding, like people are like they're very lost in who they are and their identity, right? Because it's like then you decide, okay, well, you know what? Then I'm gonna do like for me, like a year ago, I was like, I'm gonna do keto, and I kept my head down and did keto, and a lot of people start it, and then their algorithm shows them something that's like, well, you could get ketoacidosis, or you could do this and this, whatever. And it's like you have to be willing to be wrong, but you've got to stick some shit out. And so I think that we allow so many distractions into our awareness and our field of awareness, and that inhibits our mindset because there's just too much and we can't consciously process that much. Our subconscious can process all of it, but that's not serving us. So it's like just narrow the focus, I think,
Hmm.
for the mindset work. And then if you want to change your mind, you really can't do it until you know why you're doing it. And from an internal influence. And so I think one of the most interesting things I read in the last year was talking about how our great grandparents had no access to global news. So they only knew what was going on in their village. And our bodies are not, well, back to Dunbar's number, right? You know, we're only meant to have about 150 social connections. And for our prefrontal cortex can only handle that much, and our neocortex of our brain can only handle so many relationships and understanding the relationships around us. And so I remember in college writing a paper on globalization. I have an economics degree. I was drunk all of college. So I learned absolutely nothing. And a few years after college, I realized what globalization was. And my paper was so good because I'm a good writer that the professor read it in front of the class. I got like a 99% on it. It was about globalization. I wrote the entire thing without really understanding what it was. But what it really is saying like there's no non-connection anymore. There's nothing that's not connected. And so now it's like you're almost shamed if you don't know what's going on in world news. And it's like, well, how could you not understand the cultural isms that are happening here and there and everywhere when really like I mean, just in America, there's 350 some million people or whatever. Like we don't need to know what's going on in Kentucky or California or whatever. And like we think we fucking need to know. We really believe that, don't we? We
Yep.
think we need to know. And do we? Is that serving us?
Right.
Or should we worry about ourselves, our families, our own little microcosm? And if we did that, our mindset would just fix itself.
There's something that Alex and I did, and I'm going to bring this up because it's relevant to what she just said. We were fans of Charlie Kirk. Okay. Undoubtedly, we are fans.
Hmm.
So he gets killed. And Alex and I put on a memorial kind of service on his birthday, which was, I believe, October 14th.
October 14th.
Yep. And as I talked to people about this, I talked to a lot of people that said, "Oh yeah, this is great. We're going to come." And then I talked to some people that had never heard of Charlie Kirk, okay? Because they're not out there, right? And that's okay.
Mhm.
And when I told them about this, and some of these guys were in their 60s and 70s, right? I mean, they're this is not the digital generation. They went and found out what he was doing, and they watched some of his stuff. And then they said to me, and they came to the memorial service in the rain and 50 degrees in the dark. Okay, I'll add, we had 160 people show up in a small town in northern Wisconsin. And they said to me, they said, I missed something here when he was alive, and they're watching his old reels and things like that. But so we have to prioritize what we do.
Right. We have to be aware of our consumption and what it's doing for us,
Yes,
right? And
correct.
I think this is where I'm like an individual over collective type of person. And then like my boyfriend's like a village person, right? Like he thinks about the village before himself. And so we offset each other really well. But like we need both kinds. And like my
Yep,
superpower is like whatever is in your best interest is in the best interest of the people around you. And that's the ripple effect. And that's true. And there might be short-term discomfort if I make a hard decision that my kids don't love or you don't love or anything short term, but I can see the vision for it.
hmm
That to me is like very important. But
yep,
we do need to take care of our village too, right?
yep,
We need to make sure the village is only about 150, not 300 million.
right. Yep. So this leads into one of the last questions we're going to talk about, and that's healing without perfection, because everybody's always looking for perfection.
Hmm.
And how do we help people pursue better health and mindset without turning it into another form of pressure or
Yeah.
self-judgment? And I'm going to throw a word out there because you're really big on this word, and I think you can use this. We'll make it the word of the day or the word of the podcast, and that is grace.
Yeah. Okay. So how do we, yeah, done's better than perfect, progress over perfection. We know these things, but it's not even about being a perfectionist. I think people just, they want the knowingness. And so I think what we need to do is shift the paradigm mindset to like being okay with not knowing. You got to be okay with walking some steps in a direction. And even if it's wrong, you adjust the path and the course, right? So like in my experience over the years of seeing clients, I've been doing this long enough to say the people who stick with it get the results. But I can almost guarantee that on the path, even if it starts like we're going straight up and they're doing better, 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 there will always be a setback. There just will. And it can be totally outside of your control. It could just be like literally like a car accident and then you have a trauma and now you have to work around that, or something happens in your family, or like literally things you can't control, getting a virus or whatever. And but let's just say you're doing all the right things and then you find out you switched to some diet that actually was like really inflammatory for you. That wasn't a fail. That was a learning experience that made you closer to being able to understand what you did. So like Esther Hicks, like Abraham Hicks, if anyone listens, they say like the path of least resistance is the path of your greatest joy. And when you have contrast, you find more of what you want. So there's this vortex of energy where everything's just in the flow. And then you have contrast. And we're in the contrast all the time. There's traffic and there's shitty people and there's all these contrasting things. And you find more about what you want and don't want in the contrast,
hmm
right? So it has to be the same in the healing. We have to allow for it. But to think that you don't have the time or space to make those steps, like that's where it becomes like a, what are you going to prioritize? What are you prioritizing over that? And that's the shift in the mindset. And that's where people are like, what do you do when people don't listen to you? I'm like, nothing. They'll come when they're ready.
Right. Yep.
And some of them may never get ready, and that's okay. I thank God gave me that mindset when I started this, that I didn't feel the need to save everyone,
Yep. Right. Because we
because
can't.
I would be insane and it
Yep.
would ruin me. It would
Yep.
burn me out and ruin me, and I wouldn't be
Hmm.
effective at what I do.
Yes. Right.
But I
So,
think just allowing yourself to be vulnerable and to say, like, even if you made a mistake or made a wrong choice, you it was not lost.
yep. So we're going to wrap up with a big question that we're both going to answer because I think it's important for people to know your perspective and my perspective. And that question is this, and that is if listeners could ask themselves one honest question this week that might change their health trajectory, what should it be? And you can ask the question and then you can explain, and then I'll do the same.
No, can you go first?
Okay, sure. I'll go
I
first.
didn't read this far, so I didn't.
Oh, okay.
I gotta
Okay.
think
So
for a
I'll give you an
second.
opportunity. I'll reread the question. If listeners could ask themselves one honest question this week that might change their health trajectory, what should it be? My question to them, which is literally something that you should look at yourself in the mirror. Mirror work is wonderful, okay? Because what happens is you actually are forced to look at yourself, and it's hard to lie into the mirror because it's hard to lie to yourself. Sociopaths can do it, psychopaths can do it, but that is a vast minority of the people, right? So my question would be, as I look in the mirror, is am I healthy and do I know what it's like to be healthy? Okay. And my answer is this. I am healthy. I'm 68 years old. I'm on no meds. I feel good. I have a certain amount of inflammation, which we deal with through supplements and or other things. Again, no meds. Why did I get here? I got here because I was working with Alex and my wife on helping me better. 25 years ago, I was golfing with my dad and his buddies. They're in their 60s. Realize I'm 68. Okay, they were in their 60s, and we're on a tee, and one of the guys who was a very wise man, president of a bank, looked at me and said, "Steve, these golden years suck." And he is in his mid 60s, and all the guys here are on meds, right? One guy 2 years later had a stroke and died, or lived in a nursing home for a year and then died. But they were already they were falling apart. And the question we ask ourselves is, how do I feel today? Did I wake up tired or did I wake up with energy? Okay. I mean, I wake up naturally. My cortisol works because my caffeine has not disrupted my circadian rhythm. And I have energy throughout the day, and my adenosine and melatonin kick in at night, and I go to sleep at night, and I sleep good, and I dream well, and I'm rejuvenated. Okay. Now, since 85% of the people in the United States drink caffeine, they don't have this. Okay. I now have a sun lamp that I sit under every morning when I wake up in the dark while I work, and it helps boost my cortisol. When the sun's out, I have an east facing window. I watch the sun come up. What does it do? It gets your cortisol going, which is a stress hormone, but it's produced naturally in the body to make you feel better. Okay, your turn.
Amazing. Okay. All right. I'm gonna set this up by saying that I there's this thing called the map of consciousness. There's a range of emotions. Okay. So there's higher vibration emotions and lower vibration emotions. Courage is neutral. If you're anywhere down in those lower vibrations and you can get to courage, you can turn the corner. But those low vibrations are like jealousy, shame, guilt, fear, all of that, right? They're all the fear-based emotions. And then you have the love-based emotions. And so we know that love vibrates so high, right? Well, you know what vibrates like exponentially higher than love? Authenticity. Okay. So I believe that people who live in conflict with their soul are not going to be fully healthy in mind, body, and spirit. The the physical, the 3D dense energy of these meat suits that we're in, those are they're all a reflection or a result of the energy that we carry. And so the first choice is to be authentic and to live within our true authentic self. And if I believe that if people are authentic, they will always be healthier because they have a different belief system. And authenticity is actually, we were just talking about this the other night, like you can disagree with someone, but if they're authentic, it's not offensive. It's actually attracts you because you can feel the authenticity. So if you live in your authentic self, the majority of the time, you're in ease, you're in flow, things feel good, you're on purpose, you're happening to things, things aren't happening to you. And you are speaking your truth and you're living your truth. And so then the other side of that is your conditioned self. And that's where you allow in all of these other ideas and thoughts, and you have overwhelm, and you have procrastination, and you have worrying about what other people will think. And all of those things happen in your conditioned self. And so if you got up in the morning and said, am I living in my authentic self or my conditioned self? And how can I shift that if I'm not in my authentic self? I think that if you're in your authentic self, all of a sudden, all of the things in your mind that tell you you can't get better or do what it takes to get better go away. And you would see no barriers to just coming in and seeing someone like me and getting answers and solutions because you realize that that authenticity makes you vibrate so much higher.
Okay.
Our high vibration, our bodies want to be high vibration, and whole real organic foods are high vibration, and processed food is shit and it's low vibe. But our energy is the same, and our energy is a prediction of our matter. So the first thing is like how we're thinking about it, and you have to use that conscious thought to break down the subconscious patterns that we have. So are you
Yep.
being authentic?
There you go. Excellent. So we're going to wrap this up. What is the best way if people want to follow you or get a hold of you? Where
Yeah.
should they go? And I'll put it in the show notes as well. But
Okay. Yeah, so Alexandra Hartinger on Facebook is my main platform. I do have an Instagram called Soul Set Rising. Soul Set Rising is a mindset coaching group that I have that's turning into more of a podcast and event-based brand.
mhm.
Symmetrynaturalhealth.com is my website. I sell all of our products on there, and it's a way to just kind of see what we are. But the best thing to do is follow Alexandra Hartinger on Facebook and then follow Symmetry Natural Health on Facebook and connect that way.
Excellent. Well, thank you. This was very enlightening. Since I've known you for 41 years, I actually learned a lot of stuff today. So hopefully this doesn't overwhelm. If you need to listen to this two or three times, you should. There's a lot of great information. I know that Alex will be back in the future because we
Absolutely.
have a lot of things to talk about,
We
which
have.
we didn't even come close to. But
Yeah.
we
And
hit
thank
some.
you for
Yeah,
doing this because
you're
I was
welcome.
not, I've had a rough couple months and I was not in a headspace
Yep,
to get it to do this. And I'm
yep,
back. So
excellent. Yep.
here we go.
Okay, so if this episode challenged something you've normalized, don't scroll past that feeling. Subscribe to Can You Handle the Truth because the topics ahead won't get more comfortable, but they will become more honest. And if someone came to mind while you were listening, send this episode to them. In other words, share it with a friend. Comfort keeps people stuck. Truth sets them free. And the question of the day is, can you handle the truth? Thanks so much, Alex. Love you.
Thank you.
And
Love
God bless
you.
all of you. Okay, bye.
Bye.